Hello, School of Hard Knocks. So excited to be back here with you guys today. And I am honored to be sitting down with Suzanne. Suzanne and I just met really recently, and I feel like I've been meeting a lot of women in the women's entrepreneurial group. Is that where we came from?
Yes, right.
I think so too. And the woman that I had just interviewed just about an hour, well, no, it was about 15 minutes ago. Our conversation was an hour and a half. She was a powerhouse and had a lot of good stuff to say. But we met in the same place and we were chatting about, so many people don't realize these groups are so good for just meeting people, just for friendship purposes and not just marketing and business and things like that, but just for friendship. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
so
never know
happy.
what will become of it, right?
Heck yeah. So Suzanne is the author of a book. It is Keep Your Healthy Mind When Your Loved One Loses Theirs. So we are going to chat about this today. So Suzanne, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself, and how did you get to becoming an author of your own book?
Sure. So I am a mother, an executive, entrepreneur, and a grandma. And with all of those things, a very full life, you can imagine. My husband and I have 8 kids together, and we've even started a business or two together, and we have a full life. And so did my children. And the main character in this is my oldest daughter. She was 29 years old when she started displaying peculiar behaviors, worrisome behaviors, and it taking us all by complete surprise, blindsided with what is going on and what do we need to do. That started my journey exactly 6 years ago. That's when this set in for her. So this normally vivacious and radiant person, my daughter Bailey, she was a businesswoman herself. She was aspiring to be all that she could be. She was moving up the ladder in her career and has 2 very sweet children and a husband. And well, all those things got disrupted, and I felt like being blindfolded and asked to lead the blind.
Mhm.
So I started journaling as I was experiencing the day-to-day chaos and looking at the journal several times. I saw chapters forming. It wasn't a desire to write a book at first, but it was definitely a desire to get my feelings out on paper and just document what was happening. I almost felt like that was documentation for
Yeah.
some path we didn't know where the end was going to end up. And a very wise friend of mine told me this is a book and your message has a lot of meaning. What really took me by surprise was the fact that the book wasn't about her and what was going on, which I thought was the crazy story. Well, it's more about how did it affect me. And as I started to accept that and pursue that, that's when everything fell together. And it's my especially long title. I tried to shorten the title of the book, but I couldn't. I mean, how can you keep your mind healthy when somebody you love dearly is losing theirs? Is the most appropriate title for what it's about.
Yeah, I really love how, a lot of times when we're going into talking about different things from our past, different things we've gone through, like 8 out of 10 times it's centered around the problem, the person, the situation. There's not always a whole lot that's centered around the people on the outside of it, a caregiver, a parent, a friend, a spouse. And, nobody really thinks about that, how you're impacted by. And we don't talk about it because of course the first thing is well gosh, how selfish for me to talk about what I'm going through, right? Because I
Yeah,
felt like that with my dad. Like with my dad and his brain injury, I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk about how I'm feeling. My dad has a traumatic brain injury. I don't want to look like a selfish person. And then as I started investigating my own healing through what had happened more, I started to realize there are caregivers out there that probably sit in silence and don't say anything about what it is that they're going through and what they're feeling because they don't want to make it about them. And
Right.
it's such a humbling place to be when you realize that, you are so involved intimately with this situation that truly people aren't going to expect for you not to be impacted by it. Right. So it's a little bit
Yes,
of like growth and self-care and showing yourself grace and loving yourself. Like you said, when I got to the point of where I realized, well, actually, it's not really so much about her, it's about me. That's not selfish, that's real, right?
it is. We hear a lot about self-care. It's all over the place. We know about it, but that doesn't take away the fact it took me over a year to consider that
Mhm.
I needed some care as well. And maybe a year and a half to even accept that what was happening to my daughter was chronic or life. It didn't have a immediate end, and it took me that long to even get to that. When you say there's so many people that sit in silence, I worry about those people. I worry about the ones that are their symptoms themselves are compounding and they're not even recognizing it. There are statistics. I mean, the World Health Organization says 1 in 7 people in the world have a mental illness. In the United States, the statistic is 20% of us. Now, multiply that with all the people that love them and interact with them. The number is astounding.
Yeah. Yeah. And we become like the back burner people. Like we
Yeah,
put our emotions on the back burner. We put how we're feeling on the back burner because, like I said, nobody wants to take the spotlight off of the person or the situation that you feel needs all of that attention. Because how are they going to get the help? How are they going to feel loved in the journey that they're going through if I'm talking about what it is that I'm going through?
right.
So what an interesting place to finally come to be like, well, it's about her, but this is how it impacted me. So what are some of the ways that you've been impacted and how have you been able to grow through those moments?
Sure, let's talk about that. Listen, so if you have somebody in your life that has mental illness and your focus is on that, as it should be, realizing a few things and getting to an acceptance level was really the crucial part of it. Maybe for me, it was just realizing that this isn't going away. There is no, I was looking for the healing, the cure, and the answers. And when I shifted a little bit from looking for the answer for her, I was able to step back and be there for her more. And as much as I'm saying that, at the same time, I'm remembering all the parts where I failed. So when you get to acceptance, and let's think of the stages of grief, you might have some anger and denial before all that. Well, that cycle can repeat over and over again, even though you've reached one good milestone in that, you may falter back. And one thing I want to talk about a little bit is regret and how damaging that can be, because regret and guilt kind of have a similar connotation. And with all the things going on in the world and all the things you cannot control that really weigh down our own mental health, we don't need to add into it things like that, little self-destructive behaviors like guilt and
Mhm.
regret. So we have to realize that there are things we can control and grab onto those. So it may be that you work on controlling how you react, right? And that's one of our major things we can all take stock in, because it's just interactions with others in life, not to mention just the person who is ill in your life, but with everyone. We can always control how we react. And for me,
Yes.
that was a major focus. I would find myself saying things I shouldn't have said or questioning, should I have said this differently? Why did I blow up, when I could have kept my calm, all those things. So I had to really address that for one. Another one that was pretty impactful and took me a long time again, which my hope really is that somebody that reads my book, somebody that hears this, somebody that talks to others because they just simply start talking about it will understand that they can get to these realizations sooner than I did because that was detrimental to my health. So physiologically, I was having, for me, it was stomach issues, like major pain and discomfort and episodes that were quite critical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Later, identifying it with a therapist was like, oh, that's what anxiety is. That's what a
Mm-hmm.
panic attack is, and having been a person with um, very little mental health issues myself, I may have had a little interaction with depression or something at some time in my life. It went away. I was good. So I didn't recognize those things for what they were.
Right.
When we can take care of our physical self, our mental self will show up better. So it is all connected. And that is a major takeaway for all of us that if you're not expressing it, it may show up in your body in other ways.
Yep, that was definitely something that I had to learn, and I was the same way because, I really prided myself on wearing the Superwoman cape my whole entire life. Like nothing ever rattles me. I
Mhm.
can handle everything. I can do all of the things. But after this situation happened with my dad, I had to rely on actual medical personnel to save his life, and it was this very I don't like not having control. I don't even like being the passenger in a vehicle. So it's like that, and a lot of that stems from my childhood trauma that I had gone through. But I had the same thing, like what is this like heaviness that I feel in
Mhm.
my chest? And oh my gosh, like, am I having like a heart attack? That's what it was like. And then digestive issues, pains in my
Mhm.
stomach, where I'm like, oh my, did I pull something? Like, what is it? And it's all related. Your body holds on and internalizes all of this stuff. And if you don't have a healthy way to have an output of it, it's going to stay there and it's not going to go away. And then you're really going to start to panic because you're wondering, well, gosh, is there really something wrong with me? So, what are some of the steps that you took, like when you figured out, oh, okay, like I need to release some of this? What are some of the ways that helped you to release some of that?
I think a support system is very much needed. That can mean many things for many people. I looked to particular family members. My husband is the rock for me. If if you can find one person in your life that can be, that they can listen to you without judgment, they can make you laugh. he would he was a master at taking light of situations that you normally wouldn't, but turning it into a moment where the feelings could dissipate and I could be distracted in a good way and get
Yes.
out of that funk. So that was very helpful. You might get physical with it and exercise, burn off that energy. I was teaching my grandson not to hit his little sister, and said, "You know what? Here's a nice big pillow. Go attack it." So that was a
Yeah.
funny way that as soon as I taught him that, I'm like, "Oh, I can do that too." So
Yeah. Yeah,
getting
those
rid
are
of
like
that.
all really fun tools that I call like in my toolbox. And not everybody's tools are going to work for the same person, but the more that we start to share what has worked for me, maybe it's not going to work for you, or maybe it needs to be elevated. Maybe a pillow isn't going to work for Sharon, but she needs a punching bag. Maybe she's a heavy hitter and she needs something like real, but I like how you said, reaching out to people, because that, even if it is just one person that is your safety person, it's like we feel, especially as women, like we don't want to tell somebody I'm having a moment and I really need to talk about it right now. But if you have
100%.
that safety person, you should never have to worry about having that feeling, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned tools, and so I did make sure that that is, as much as my book is a memoir or what they call a narrative nonfiction, that every chapter would end with tangible things that you can take away and try to do yourself. They're not going to be the cure all as well, but they're going to be something you may not have thought of, something that that was what was so revealing to me. My first therapist visit, if I can share that one.
Yes.
I went to him knowing that, okay, finally it's my turn to get some therapy. And how can I work through the grief I'm feeling? Um, a different friend of mine said that they had an experience with a falling out with their brother, and she had to go through the grief process as if he had died, you know? And I'm like, what?
Mhm.
That's so interesting to me. So that I thought of that. I'm like, the girl I knew, my daughter I knew, wasn't any longer. And I needed to work through that grief. So
Mhm.
what he told me though, I thought we'd just start that process right away. I'm a very let's get to it kind of person. And he said, we will, and we'll explore that. But this week I want you to sleep. I want you to take melatonin for 7 nights in a row. Just trust me on this. And I mean, duh, sleep regulates our brain, sleep regulates our emotions and lets us handle and deal with things. But something so simple to a really, I consider myself pretty smart or critical thinking woman, was like revealing to me, like, wow, you can really look past the simple things that can help you. So that was one of them. I'd like to share a couple more. Another way to release was writing a letter. When I realized I
Mhm.
was venting, which really helped me, if I could have a conversation with my daughter about all the ways she's not measuring up, or you know, let's get on the same page with this. What could you do in the household to make our household a little more congruent, right? Instead of attacking her, or I mean, that sounds a little harsh, but instead of having heated conversations with her,
Mhm.
I took the opportunity to write a couple letters and never shared them with her, but I wrote it out. I was able to vent in a different way that wasn't going to damage our relationship any further. It wasn't going to do any good me telling her those things, but to write it out and then throw that letter away has a therapeutic effect.
Yes.
Back to the physical aspect, I was trying to stave off depression so that I didn't lose my own healthy mind, and realized, I need to look at some physical aspects of this, and did a couple blood tests. This was after a lot of exploring the digestive issue, like you were talking about, like
Mhm.
that hits you. And I start wondering, what am I eating wrong? And
Yep.
am I all of a sudden allergic to gluten? All these
Yes.
things that aren't the case. Um, but in that process, I explored even like how's my hormone levels since I'm
Mhm.
50, right? The progesterone part, I think they call it the happy hormone,
Mhm.
was next to nil. So I went and got a prescription for progesterone so I can at least have that on my side.
Yeah.
And I think that has staved off like a real deep depression that I didn't want to medicate really. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it was so relatable going back to two steps before when you said that you had to go through a grieving process. And it's
yeah,
so like not often that I actually get to communicate with somebody that will understand me and what I went through when you're grieving the loss of somebody who's still alive. And that is like such an off the wall thought for people that they can't even like relate to how that makes sense. Like my dad was alive, but he had a traumatic brain injury. So there was aphasia, there was no communication, there was a thumbs up and a thumbs down, after I got him home, a head shake yes, a head shake no. And I grieved my dad so hard. And it was like I could touch him, I could kiss him, I could hold him, but he wasn't the dad that I had known for almost 40 years of my life. And it
right.
hurt. I just thought I'm so blessed that he's still here, but it was like almost more painful. It almost felt like more painful than just grieving the loss of somebody because I
You
wanted
know,
him to just come out of it so bad. And
right.
he wasn't. And then I just started getting so pissed. Like, well, then what was the point? What was the point? His shell is here, but he's not the same dad that I've known. And not a lot of people understand that. It when I would say like I already grieved my dad so hard before he just passed away 3 months ago. But I said I grieved him so hard for the first 6 years because he wasn't the same man that I had known for 39 years of my life. And that pain is not something that a lot of people can really resonate with.
It's true. You nailed it on the head. It is actually more difficult to grieve somebody that's still alive. And let's recognize that.
Hmm. Yeah, that is a hard one. I mean, he
And
looked
it's
exactly the same, but he was not.
yeah,
And it just really, that's where a lot of my anxiety came from. And then I would have the moments too where I would be like, it's obviously not his fault. The brain injury was nothing that he had done wrong. He was shot at work, and the way he fell gave him the brain injury. So it's not like he had done something wrong, drunk driving, or gotten to, something like that. But I was so mad for so long about the situation itself.
yeah,
And you can't be mad at them because they didn't do it. So
yeah,
it's like this misdirected anger, and you're festering it all because you're putting it on a back burner and you're like, oh my gosh, does somebody have an answer about what I could do here? Because I'm starting to feel really mad about what I'm going through in my life right now. So I can
yes.
totally relate to that. So journaling. I mean, that's something that a lot of people don't think about. For me, I thought that I could do it because I'm a writer, I have
Okay.
published
Mhm. Yep.
things, but I thought, I don't know if I want to look back on some of
Hmm.
that stuff. So that was like a little bit different for me. But at the same token, I recorded like 95% of my dad's recovery because the doctors wouldn't believe the things that I was saying. So they
Oh,
thought I
yeah,
was
that's
just
a
being
journal.
hopeful. So I'm like, well, I actually have a visual journal. So I don't know how that really worked out in my brain to think that that was going to be a better idea. So now it's like looking back on some of that stuff almost hurts me more than had I would
Right.
have had just written it down. But my husband and I did a retreat last summer. And that was one of the things that she does neurologistic programming. And that was
Okay.
one of the things that she had us do is just write down every single thing that is just festering in you. And then we went over and we burnt it. And it was just this watching like all of that stuff just go up. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, right. This is gonna work. And then here I am like, oh my gosh, like it felt good to be like, yeah, that's how I felt about you. And just watch it like go away. So I'm so happy that you had that journaling that actually led you to this moment.
So that's the neuroplasty effect, right? Our
Yep.
brains don't have to remain in this slump, but they don't have to remain in the pain. We can, well, unfortunately, you do have to deal with it. You have to face it. For me, that was hard too, going back to journaling to turn them into chapters, to making the writing more appealing for a reader means using very descriptive words, being really raw. That was hard. And there'd be writing sessions where I just end in tears and have to shut the laptop. But at the same time, that was a therapy session. So we have to be brave and courageous and face it. And that's where stigma comes into. So let's talk about the society level. Um, I began to talk to people when they're, how are you? I didn't say I'm fine if I wasn't fine. Um, I mentioned my daughter to people who knew or didn't know her. And in that process, I'm breaking down stigmas. And I'm also finding out how many people that I mentioned that to. And they're like, oh, my cousin, my sister-in-law, my my mom, everyone had that I talked to for a while had somebody in their family that they're like, oh, wow, you're dealing with that. I'm dealing with this too. So that was surprising, but also a way to break down stigmas if we can all talk to each other on a level of compassion, a
Yeah.
listening ear, and breaking those stigmas down. Make a difference for all of us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's unfortunate when you come across like judgy people
Yeah.
when you're already in a crisis, right? So that was like, I was my dad's first next to kin. So I'm guardian. and now I have to make these decisions to like trick him and peg him to give him a chance at life. And oh boy, people the nerve. It's like I'm already a little unsteady. You might want to watch what you're saying to me because I might just go off, because I'm mad about some of this stuff. But when people would have the nerve, why did you choose to keep your dad alive? Who says that to somebody who's in the middle of like a grief, in the middle of trying to accept things, in the middle of trying to heal? I mean, that's a thing. Like, let's have some compassion for each other.
Yeah, the humanity behind it. I really
My
speak to that and
goodness.
advocate for that because we're all in this together
Mm,
and we can break each other down. We can, I mean, what happened to Bailey changed us. We weren't the same since. That means me. That means my husband, who's her stepdad. That means her sibling, her two kids, her husband, um, we were all literally changed for the rest of our life because of this experience. So let's keep the humanity in it because we're all in this together.
that's right. So from the time of your daughter's like beginning part of her change to now, how long has that been?
We're just going on 6 years.
Okay, so about 2019.
It was 2020. It was
Yeah.
right in January. Her husband was noticing things. In March, they came to live with us during COVID. We live in a beautiful rural setting in southern Utah. They were in the city and it was a little chaotic there at first, as we can all remember how March or April was. And
Hmm.
well, we have the ability, working remotely, they're going to come down to our little retreat, and that's when I first saw the signs. So, um, yeah, we're going those 6 years, and I would say about half of those 6 years she's been in my home, and half she's been other places where I do not know half the time. I get comforted, unfortunately, when I find out she's living with some random person for a minute or in jail for trespassing or, just being out there and I don't know, getting picked up for probably being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that you're not supposed to. And then I get comforted that she's actually has the shelter in jail. And that's a very hard feeling to reconcile because
Yeah.
that's not a good place either. Um, if she was admitted to the hospital and the mental health wards, I'd be comforted and then find out all the things they did while she was there. And again, that was hard to reconcile. It's like, where is she safe? And I felt like the only place she was literally safe was in our home.
Hmm.
And it's not the place she chooses first to be. Um, we have a little structure here that's got to give a little in situations like this. And at first, I was pretty rigid about it. I was going to make um, my boundaries pretty solid, and knowing that she had her own ways of looking at everything, I needed to analyze my boundaries again and again.
Yeah, it's interesting in life how many times we really have to be like a chameleon and like
Yeah,
just blend into the situation because you're not born with a book that's going to say, well, if this happens, if your dad gets shot at work, this is what you should do. If your daughter goes into a mental health crisis, this is what you should do. It's very interesting because I did the best that I could with the information that I had at hand, same as you. You did the best that you could with the information that you had at hand, and you had to learn, and you had to be a chameleon, and you had to try to figure it out. And this is why it's so important that these things are talked about. Because, like you said, even if one person listens in or reads my book and it helps give them the shortcut, then it wasn't that it was all for nothing. Then it can help somebody. It can change somebody else and be like, oh, I'm so happy that I, read that book from Suzanne because geez, I didn't know where I was going to go and I did this and this. And, even if it's just helping one or two people, that's the ultimate goal.
it is. I went through my own school of hard knocks and want to help others through that process as well.
Yeah. Living at the School of Hard Knocks is not always an awesome place to be. That's why I talk about getting unstuck from the trauma and stuck in the healing because, like, when you go through trauma, it's never going away. It's going to subside. It's not going to be as rigid and red and bright and in your face all of the time, but it's there. I kind of equate trauma to like a scar. Some scars are like you have to say, "Do you see this scar on my finger? My brother slammed my finger in my grandparents' farmhouse door when we were kids." And they're like, "Where?" And it's like
Yeah.
right here. Like I know that it's there. And other scars, people are like, "Whoa, what the heck happened?" Like you can totally see it. So there's so many different levels of trauma and how that heals. A scar is going to obviously heal as good as they can if you nurture it, if you take care of it, if you do what you're supposed to do. But if you leave it as a big, gaping gash, it's going to be more evident throughout your whole entire life, even how you process through things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, how awesome to have you put this entire journey of yours into a book. So going forward, because your daughter is not completely being helped. She's not allowing herself to be helped yet the way that she needs to be. So it's still you being in this journey, but you've learned things over the last 6 years that are helping you. So, how are you doing current day in your journey?
I am doing better with taking the moments as they hit me out of the blue, you could say.
Hmm.
You don't always anticipate when something's going to affect you emotionally, right? And so if it does, I try to step away, take that moment. For me lately, it's been getting reacquainted with crying. I'm a very stoic person who doesn't prefer to cry. I usually just get to, how do I deal with this situation and problem and not get all emotional about it. So I got reacquainted with that and realized there is a lot of physical and mental benefits to that very process. And
Yes.
the more you embrace it and um, even take the crying to the level it needs to in that moment, helps me for days after. So
Hmm.
I look at that differently. And I'm able to, even with the help of my spirituality, we are asked to love one another. And separating the illness from the person for a moment to love them brings us back down to where we need to be there for them, to show up for them, and to help them and help ourselves the best we can. And that's the part of the stigma breakdown as well. So not only can I do that with my daughter now, but there's not a, sorry, there's not a homeless person on the street that I don't look at differently,
Yeah. Hmm.
or a mother struggling with a kid who's over, I don't know, reacting or something, like just looking at everyone differently and bringing it down to that love one another spiritual level has really helped me not lose it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
in the midst
I
of
mean,
all the
just
tools I've been using.
humanizing. It's
Yeah.
humanizing the world. I mean, we talk about wanting peace and gentleness so much on this earth, but so many people are so judgy, about the homeless person, about the kid who's losing their mind because they can't have the candy bar at the store and the mom's just trying to figure it out. We are all just out here trying to survive. And everybody is going through something. And it's that, going through trauma sometimes really allows you to be able to open up and see the world just so differently. It's almost like seeing it through the eyes of a child again. Children aren't judging another child for coming to school with a different lunchbox. They're like, "Oh, cool, different lunchbox. Like, what do you got in there?" You know what I mean? It's that taking it down a little bit. So many people are stuck in this place of keeping up with the Joneses and so worried about what they have, what they don't have, what they're driving, what their house looks like. And there's people out here that just need you to recognize them, just see them, just see them in their moment. Just even looking at a mom and kind of being like, I feel ya, I've been there. That's gonna make her be like, oh, I feel so less ashamed in that moment.
Right.
There's so many simple things that we just take for granted that could literally change somebody's entire day.
Sure is. It sure
Yeah,
is. What I want the reader of this book to have when they're done with it and is to be seen, educated, and warned, but also comforted that they are not alone. They don't
yeah,
have to go this alone, and all hope is not lost. You can find hope in the midst of the chaos, and you just got to know where to look, and you got to be aware of that draw to hope.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this today. Thank you
You're
for
so
being so
welcome.
strong. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your journey. Thank you for trying to help other people get to where you are at a quicker, more healthier, like you said, pace, right? Because a lot of people
Yeah.
take them on healthy directions to try to numb what's going on in their life.
Oh yeah.
So if people are trying to find you, where are they going to find you?
Well, for now, as I am shopping agents to get this, I'm getting a traditional publishing deal. So I expect it to be published this year. But for now, I'd like people to join my group and be that a part of my community. You can find me on Facebook, Suzanne Catlett author. You can find me on Instagram, just my name, Suzanne Catlett. And I would love them to join my community in the meantime and work through some of these things. There's plenty of the book I haven't even shared at this point, and
Yeah,
it is the one I wrote that this is the book I wrote that I wish I had on day zero. So that's what I want to offer the world. And thank you
yeah.
so much for having me and relating your story as well to mine.
Of course. Well, I appreciate you being here. This has been such a great conversation. Definitely go and check out Suzanne and support the cause because it's so important for us, like she said, to support each other during these hard times. So this has been a pleasure. Like I always say, with God, healing is always possible. And we're going to see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.